here, please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
So here's a Democratic congressman on the show with Crystal Ball and Rising, and watch what happens here.
I do want to ask you, though, Congressman, about the underlying accusation. Hunter Biden was paid $50,000 a month while his father was vice president of the United States to sit on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, despite having no expertise in that whatsoever. Do you think that that is evidence of corruption?
So all of this has been discussed in the press, and Ukraine has said there was no substance to that. The president has historically long been involved with conspiracy theories. This is yet another conspiracy theory.
But
we can't lose sight of this simple fact.
We know that Hunter Biden did, in fact, earn $50,000 on this board. That's not a conspiracy theory. We know that he has little to no expertise in Ukrainian energy sector. So is that unseemly? Is that the type of thing that we should be accepting from a prominent Democrat?
So he does the knee jerk, which you're taught is you just call anything that's onto your corruption, you call it a conspiracy theory. He calls it a conspiracy theory that Hunter Biden had a $50,000 a month job. That's a verifiable fact.
Last year, in an interview, Joe bragged about getting Ukraine's general prosecutor fired. He says he was standing up to corruption.
I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko. They would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Well, it just so happens that the general prosecutor was investigating an energy firm in which Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was heavily invested.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here.
Burisma Holdings is an energy corporation in Ukraine, and Hunter Biden, the son of the former vice president, has made a rather handsome profit from it, especially in the aftermath of the 2014 events in Ukraine in which pro-EU forces took power. That prosecutor was looking into 3 different instances of foul play from Hunter's cash cow. However, all it took was a phone call from Papa Joe, and that prosecutor was out.
The son of the U.S. Vice President has joined the board of directors of Ukraine's largest private gas producer. Hunter Biden now leads the company's legal unit, getting the position a few weeks after his father's trip to Kiev. And as Marina Portna explains, this could be more than just a coincidence. Since the start of the crisis in Ukraine, Washington has provided unwavering moral and financial support to anti-government protesters, particularly those who spearheaded the uprising. Over the past months, Kiev has received special visits from the CIA director, the Secretary of State, his assistant, senators, and most recently, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, who recently crossed the Atlantic to assure Ukrainians that America's involvement in their crisis is sincere.
As you attempt to pursue energy security.
Well, as it turns out, Joe Biden's youngest son will be conveniently playing a major role in Ukraine's pursuit of energy independence. Hunter Biden has been appointed head of legal affairs at Burisma Holdings, Ukraine's largest private gas producer. The U.S. Vice President's son will also join the company's board of directors, consulting on matters related to international expansion and policies surrounding the country's economy. Critics say this is typical Washington politics, exploiting a foreign crisis for personal gain.
It's very difficult to disentangle business interests from national interests.
Vice President Biden has repeatedly accused Moscow of meddling in Ukraine's affairs, also insisting that America will help Kyiv reduce its dependency on Russia's energy. Mr. Biden just didn't mention that his own son and the U.S. would be benefiting in the interim.
I think the only question beyond that, though, that remains unanswered by Biden or his son, frankly, is why was he given this job? Why was he making as much money as he was reportedly making? And would he have obtained this job were he not the son of the vice president? That's a fair line of inquiry that he has yet to engage in, and that when you broach with Biden allies, let's just say that the volume on the telephone goes up a bit because they just don't like to entertain those questions.
We had plans that included interrogations and other crime investigation procedures into all members of the executive board, including Hunter Biden.
Meanwhile, the Ukraine issue again raises questions about Joe Biden's push to have a Ukrainian prosecutor fired when he was vice president. Biden insists he wanted Viktor Shokin gone because he was corrupt, not because he was investigating Burisma Holdings, a company employing his son Hunter. But a newly uncovered sworn affidavit tells another story.
Mr. Shokin swears under oath he was told he was fired because he refused to drop the Burisma investigation, and it made Mr. Biden, the vice president, unhappy.
One might argue that perhaps Joe Biden had no idea about his son's financial interests. They say he's the vice president. Perhaps he was too busy running the country to pay attention to his son's finances. However, if he watched any American media, he couldn't have missed it. Back during the Ukraine events of 2014, the White House dismissed any notion that Hunter Biden's financial dealings had any impact on their decisions.
I'm wondering if the State Department has any concerns or any thoughts about the vice president's son joining the board of directors of this Ukrainian gas company.
No, he's a private citizen.
So here's a Democratic congressman on the show with Crystal Ball and Rising, and watch what happens here.
I do want to ask you, though, Congressman, about the underlying accusation. Hunter Biden was paid $50,000 a month while his father was vice president of the United States to sit on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, despite having no expertise in that whatsoever. Do you think that that is evidence of corruption?
So all of this has been discussed in the press, and Ukraine has said there was no substance to that. The president has historically long been involved with conspiracy theories. This is yet another conspiracy theory.
But
we can't lose sight of this simple fact.
We know that Hunter Biden did, in fact, earn $50,000 on this board. That's not a conspiracy theory. We know that he has little to no expertise in Ukrainian energy sector. So is that unseemly? Is that the type of thing that we should be accepting from a prominent Democrat?
So good at is following the money, essentially. And now this new book, Secret Empires, profiles the Kerry family, the Biden family, and the McConnell family. So starting with Kerry and Biden, because those two are linked.
Right.
Explain what you found in the business connections and China and their government positions.
Well, it's really interesting, Martha, because there's this critical period from 2013 to 2016 during the Obama administration where the U.S. is engaging with China on the South China Sea, military challenges, on trade, on intellectual property. Joe Biden, in December of 2013, flies over to Beijing in Air Force Two. With him on the plane is his son, Hunter Biden. Joe Biden gets widely criticized for going soft on Beijing. Well, 10 days after they return, his son, Hunter Biden, scores a private equity deal for $1 billion. That's a billion with a B. It's important to note Hunter Biden has no background in private equity. He has not done business in China before. And he, along with a guy named Devin Archer, who's a close Kerry family aide, start doing these deals in China. There are two other major deals that involve the Kerry and the Biden elements with China, three of them worth billions of dollars.
He's got his fingers in a lot of pies from what I hear.
2 years and half of it. You got scams you haven't even dreamed of. Kickbacks on his kickbacks.
And the argument that they are going to try to make is that this had no influence over policy, which to me is just ludicrous.
And she doesn't let him get away with it. Crystal Ball nails him. And I don't know why. Who do the guys think they're talking? They think they're on a regular news show. I think that's what they think.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He thought he was on with Chuck Todd or Jake Tapper or Rachel Maddow or something, and that he didn't expect them to go. That's not how conspiracies work. This is a fact that he had that. So now he can't say that anymore. And now let's see what he says.
Again, that's a separate issue. There is no question that what the president is trying to do is to pressure an ally.
I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a got fired.
And putting U.S. interests at risk by withholding necessary military aid. Again, this puts at risk our national security.
Yeah,
so
I think we
leave
understand
it to
your
others.
position. I think we understand your position quite clearly. Let's make it a future event. If a Democrat wins the White House, should their vice president have a child who serves? Should they be allowed to have a child who serves on a foreign energy company's board with interests in the United States?
We can talk about what people should be allowed to invest in, what jobs they should be allowed to take.
That's what we're doing. We're talking about it right now. We're asking you, should that person, do you see how horrible this looks for the Democrats? Do you see how easy this is to get them tied into knots over this? Do you see how this is going to be 100% failure to go after Trump on impeachment on this? It's amazing.
That was like the ultimate deflection. He's like, well, I mean, we can talk about that. Well, we're doing it now in something called an interview.
We're doing an interview where we're talking about it.
Again, a different issue. I know here in Congress we are required to file full disclosures of our financial positions, of any other positions we've had. I believe in transparency.
This Democratic congressperson believes in transparency. How about this for some transparency? This is an October 22nd, 2012 article about Joe Biden's other son, James Biden, Hunter's younger brother. $1.5 billion contract in Iraq for Joe Biden's little brother exposes Obama ahead of the debate. It says here, Mitt Romney has criticized Obama for giving green energy subsidies to campaign donors. But a new report ahead of tonight's debate shows this White House crony capitalism has a foreign policy angle. Hillstone International won a coveted government contract in part because the company has the little brother of the vice president as a partner, as David Richter, president of the company, Hillstone, explained to investors in a recent meeting.
Hell no, to the no, no, no. Hell to the no, hell to the no, to the no, 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 no.
I believe the American people have a right to understand that. But don't get lost in the discussion the fact that the President of the United States has abused the power of his office and put national interests ahead of, or personal interests ahead of our national interests, risking our national
almost got
security.
that wrong.
That's my focus. That's what I want to hold this president to account, and that's what I believe this impeachment inquiry should focus upon.